Hello again. We got cut off there, so we'll go ahead and start back up out here in the patio. So we're going to walk inside and cover a few items inside. So let's go ahead and walk into the kitchen. There's a few things I want to point out. So I always like to start with the kitchen faucet. Again, going back, there are some items that need some definitely some deferred maintenance. The faucet had been used quite a bit, so it's actually loose at the base, which can be tightened up at the bottom. There's a nut that just needs to be tightened down. Then also we have the sprayer wand here, the on-off button. The rubber piece is worn out, so it's an aesthetic issue at this point. It's not going to cause any water leakage or anything like that, but obviously it doesn't look that great, so you may choose to tighten this up and get this fixed, but that means you have to go look for parts and things like that. So the time and money spent might not be worth it, so you might think about just going and purchasing a new faucet, and that problem is solved. Also, looks like the previous owners just overlooked sealing the sink area, which is something you definitely need to do on a regular basis, especially with the granite, because they have seams, and it needs to be siliconed on a regular basis. As you can see over here, it is really worn out, and you do have cracks and things like that, so any water that gets back there will leak either back here or along the counter, which we have a little bit of staining underneath the kitchen counter on the sheetrock, and looks like the texture is peeling off a little bit. So I don't see any major damage there. So the sheetrock, the texture can be peeled off and maybe redone down there. So let me also point out this area here. So this is to the right of the main counter, all the way in the end cabinet. About 3 feet to the left is the sink. So most likely water got backed in there, possibly from overspill and things like that. It's also possible that this air gap device, which is connected to the dishwasher drain line, we see this a lot, where if the drain line gets clogged down there, water will just come out here into the sink. So if that's not directed toward the sink, if it was like that, now you got all this water just spilling out of here. Even though it may not actually spill all the water, if it even have a little bit of clog, maybe some water will come out of here, and one would not really realize that there's water coming out. So if that gets ignored, so now you got water just flowing down here, and which is probably the case at this point. Water got down here, and there's a little bit of delamination on the cabinet here, which probably can be refinished. And then also the water kind of made its way down here, and caused a little bubbling on the staining and bubbling on the texture. So looking at this, I don't see any black mold or any moldy spots, so it's just a surface damage. So if you want to, you can cut the sheetrock to make sure there's no issues back there, but I don't think so from my experience. You might be able to just peel this section of the texture and retexture and paint. Baseboard has a little swelling as well due to that, but it's not really that visible, but you may wish to go and replace a section of that baseboard or the entire piece. But there's no current problems. It's definitely from a previously neglected water issue caused by the sink. And the garbage disposal works good, no issues with that. And then underneath the sink looks good. It's just a little bit of staining above where this right behind the sink on the top of the cabinet. So that needs to be fixed. Also, actually, you do have a little bit of a leakage at the drain line down here on the right sink. The clamp ring is loose, and there's some incrustation down there. It's not really dripping. If you run it for a long time, it's a quite slow, gradual leak. So definitely needs to be fixed. Just a matter of replacing a gasket and possibly a piece of pipe. Cabinets overall looks pretty good. Just normal wear, but no damage. The stove top over here, it's a gas burning stove top, gas shut off underneath, everything looks good. It definitely could use a little bit of cleaning on your gas nozzles and things like that. Then these knobs have some burn marks on these knobs, just from pots and pans and things like that. But they're all functional. It's also an aesthetic issue right now. So you have about 1, 2, 3, 4 knobs that are have some burn marks. You might be able to go ahead and special order these to fit this type of model. And then the exhaust fan over here, everything works good. Everything's exhausted the outside. And then you have a night light here, which have the bulbs and everything is working properly. And then your island sink here has some constant dripping that's coming from the hot water valve, which possibly have a bad rubber seat inside the valve stem. So if you like the faucet and want to keep it, you can just go ahead and replace that stem in there, which is about 10 or 15 bucks, and it's fairly easy to do. This faucet also is a little loose at the base, so that needs to be tightened down a little bit. And all the plumbing underneath this sink looks fine, no issues with that. And the island and everything, granite countertops overall looks pretty good. Then down here is your electric oven. Everything functions properly with that. And the microwave looks good, no issues with that. The refrigerator is in pretty good shape. You have ice maker, water line set up there. So it's in good shape, no problems with that. And then walking over here, the family room fan. It's a really nice fan, but looks like the one of the blades are hitting the trim piece there. Looks like it needs a little adjustment, so you might choose to hire a electrician or a fan specialist to see if you can get that fixed. If not, you can just go ahead and replace the fan. And everything else over here looks good. Looks like there are some small penetrations in the ceiling, possibly from previous surround sound wiring. So if you plan on doing some surround sounds, you can just go ahead and use those holes. If not, those can be just patched up and textured and painted. And then down here is your gas burning fireplace. Traditionally, they would have a switch on the wall where you can actually turn it on and off. But in this setup here, you do have a standing pilot light in here, which you can actually turn on over here. This is your control knob for your pilot on and off. So you can leave it on during the winter time when you know you're going to use it. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you how to get the pilot light lit in a minute. But so those are the controls. This guy here controls the intensity of the flame, which this particular fireplace doesn't have that much of an intense flame, but it's not bad. And then this guy here is your on-off switch. So basically, when you leave your pilot light on throughout the winter, and then when you want to turn it on, you just go ahead and hit that switch, and then your fireplace comes on over here. So we'll just actually turn that up a little bit. And there's your flame. Like I said, the flame's a little low. Also, it kind of depends on what kind of setup you have inside there. It looks like this particular fireplace, they don't really like the embers too much, but it does produce a lot of heat, and it works pretty well. So let's go ahead and shut that off. Your pilot lighting instructions are right on this plate down here. I'm just going to leave that there. But if you have any issues lighting the pilot at any point, the local fire department or PG&E should be able to come over and do it for free for you. My phone's always open if you want me to, you know, kind of go over it at a point over the phone or something. But at this point, what you need to do is to turn it on. You turn this pilot dial to this white dial over here, and then you press that down, and then you hit this igniter several times. As you're doing that, you just look over here and make sure you see the pilot come on, and then you'll go ahead and release the pilot light knob, and then you turn the dial to on, and that should keep the pilot light on at all times. And then you just turn it on and off with this. One thing with this is you always have to open this to come and turn it on. You also could just run this through one of these and just kind of leave it here, or you can always talk to a fireplace person and put a remote in here, so that way you can just use a remote to turn it on and off, and those are not very expensive to do. We'll go ahead and shut this off. And that's all we have for this room, so we'll go ahead and continue on this way. The office over here, everything looks pretty good, no issues with that. Down here you have a little closet space underneath the stairway. And then you do have a light in there too. They have a fluorescent light, but it's actually meant for a different type of light, but that should work just fine. I'll go ahead and turn it off. The light and fan work just fine. I'm going to shut those off. And then going into this room here, the sink looks good. Looks like you have hard water around here in Davis, so that's why they have a water softener. So you might be a good idea, like I said before, to have someone come and service that. Do utilize that because it will be helpful with the hard water. Now if you look at this valve here, the incrustation you see around this valve is due to that. So so that can be cleaned out. Also the valve rubs a little bit when you turn it on and off. So that can be actually removed and cleaned out as well. But overall everything is functioning properly. The shower over here, the valve actually is the hot and cold's reversed here. Code requires that you have hot to the left, cold to the right, but with this type of setup, I'm not sure if it's meant to be like that, but as long as you know about it, where it's hot and where it's cold, you're fine. But in my report, I'm just going to say that it's hot and cold reverse, and you need to correct that, but it's definitely at your discretion. So it's really not that big of a deal, but I'm going to point that out in the report for you. And let's see, everything else here is good. Exhaust fan works good. Now down here, the GFCI outlet, that controls all 3 bathrooms. So if any of your bathrooms don't have power, here's where you will reset your GFCI for the bathrooms. And then this here is your thermostat here. You actually have a dual zone system, so you have a thermostat downstairs just for the downstairs, then you have another one upstairs. You can run both at the same time, or you can just run each individually, and that way you'll save energy. If no one's using the downstairs, you can just use the upstairs, and vice versa. And then you just have another closet space over here. Everything looks good. And then the laundry area over here, again, you have a little more incrustation on this faucet base, and it's also leaking over here. So looks like this faucet either need the cartridges replaced or the faucet itself replaced. So there's quite a bit of incrustation and just some sitting water down here. So actually I'm just going to go ahead and shut the water off from down here. That way it's not going to leak through the cabinet and cause any problems. There's no staining or anything underneath, so it's just a local leak up top. And washer and dryer hookup looks good. Actually, let me see if we have gas here too. I don't think I have. Where was gas? It's a little hard to see behind there. Yeah, so as I remember, it's just electric for your dryer. So a gas dryer will not work unless you run gas out here. So when you're thinking about if this is staying here, great. If you're buying one, it's gonna have to be just electric. Let's just step into the garage real quick. The deadbolt here is a little tight to open and close, but the strike plate can be adjusted, so those are little minor fixes that you can do. And then again, as I mentioned before, this threshold doesn't have a support down here, so go ahead and get one for this and the front door and the rear entry door as well. So let's go ahead and a few other things I'd like to talk about with the entry door. The doorbell functions just fine. So it needs a threshold support just like the other two doors. And then also the hinges need to be adjusted a little bit because the door bottom lock doesn't latch and it's a little tight on the bottom, and then when you fully close it, there's a little air gap there that you can introduce air to the house and then lose air from the house. So this door is going to need a little adjustment, and then the doorbell works just fine. Also, you definitely want to rekey all your exterior doors. Get new keys, that way you have them. I don't think you need to replace the lock itself because they're in pretty good shape. The existing key is a little tight to put in the lock, but once you rekey it, you should get new keys for that. And then this room here, everything looks good, no problems. And then we'll go ahead and walk upstairs. You do have smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarm downstairs. This here is your doorbell, and some of your lights are not working because bad bulbs, so go ahead and get your bulbs changed and test those fixtures for proper operation. Stairs look good. Beautiful handrails, and all the stairway lighting, everything looks nice.
Lennon, I'm going to cut the video off here and then just continue on with the next video while we do upstairs, okay?
Sounds good.